For the Tales of series, I chose Tales of Xillia 1 and 2, both because one is a direct sequel to the other and because they have almost the exact same battle system. But if you still think I should only pick one, let that be Xillia 2, as it pretty much perfected what was already almost perfect in the first one. I've been a fan of this series for a long time, and my personal favorite is Tales of Legendia. While I adore its battle mechanics as they remind me of the classic 2 beat-em-ups, I don't think it's the best. The Tales games evolved from 2D to 3D in no time, and if I had to choose the best 3D combat system, that'd be Xillia 2 then. Initially the transition to 3D had been slow but sure, introducing the linear motion battle system, an actual trademark of the series, which places up to 4 characters in a limited area for fighting. Tales of Symphonia was the very first one to elaborate on this system in 3D, while others like Abyss or Innocence followed an evolution of some sorts. Vesperia became back then the epitome of this series, where it finally felt you had more control over the flow of battle. It wasn't until Xillia Duology, however, that the games truly started feeling like fast-paced action RPGs. First, because Namco introduced a variation of the linear motion system now called Dual Raid Linear Motion Battle System. Being fully in 3D with excellent controls is the biggest and most notorious addition. You weren't set back to the forced linear motion system what the previous games had, going back and forth between the same line of attack. This happened all the time unless you used a button to freely move around the battlefield. In Xillia 1 and 2 it's the same case, except it's far easier to maneuver freely without the linear restriction of the controls. Plus, the many features included make the system far more friendly than the others, easier to get into, easier to break, but still engaging enough to keep the players fully challenged. Depending on the difficulty setting they choose, of course. Characters can not only dash, but also perform linked art tests together. By linking with another character, the player can also execute an overlimit, making their character immune to staggering for a short period of time using consecutive art tests with unlimited action points, which belong to a gauge called the Assault Counter. So creating the combos, executing them alone or linked, makes the fighting even more fun. I always felt like there were no strings attached when attacking or moving around. It's less technical, there's more freedom, so getting used to any character whatsoever is far easier than in previous Tales games. And in Xillia 2, Ludger, the protagonist, can switch weapons at any given time. That alone gives it extra points merely by offering variety to the battles. Overall, Xillia 2 is the epitome of this series in terms of combat, a perfect evolution of fast-paced action in 3D, while still heavily maintaining the classic Tales system originality. Fire Emblem. Once again, I won't be choosing my favorite title in the series. While I could easily make a point on how awesome combat is in Path of Radiance, I think I'd rather give the honor to the Game Boy Advance titles. There are 3 official games there, but we only got 2 of them unfortunately. There's also a gazillion fan-made hacks, some of them with great stories and excellent map design. People often prefer to make their fan games based on the interface of the Game Boy Advance titles for 2 reasons. One, simply because it's easier than the one in the GameCube, Wii, or even the 3DS games. And second, because the battle mechanics and map structure in them is simply perfection. I've had my fun in every single hack I've played, precisely because the system there is a huge addiction to play. Path of Radiance became the epitome in my opinion, but it all started back with the GBA releases. There's not much to explain about it, as it couldn't be simpler and friendlier, which means it's easy to understand and get into. Battles are played in grids, with each character depending on their status, equipment, and specifically their class, can move short or long distances. You already know about the weapon triangle system present in most Fire Emblem games, and also on how the turns work, meaning there's a player phase to do everything you can, and then the enemy phase where they get to do the same. By taking advantage of these simplistic but meaningful characteristics, the map design finally comes into play. I think I'll stick to the Blazing Sword for this video, as I believe it has the best system of them all, but make no mistake, as all 3 have almost the exact same combat. You see, Blazing Sword takes up the classic RPG progression challenge, meaning it gets harder the more you advance, while the other 2 can be utterly easy at times or overly hard at others. So, Blazing Sword is the most balanced out of the 3. It holds your hand at the beginning with a childish tutorial that explains the basics of battle. It's dumb, but it can also be really helpful if this is your very first time playing a Fire Emblem game. Map design and RNG stand out a lot here. The former because it's different on every chapter with layout variety and terrain affected areas that can either help or hinder the player. Trust me, they are not as annoying as in the Super Famicom titles or as obnoxious as in the 3DS titles. There's always a good, smartly developed bunch of ways for the player to overcome them. Plus, the random number generator, also known as the RNG, is fair most of the time. Unlike other Fire Emblem games that I won't mention, mostly anything past 75% will hit, and mostly anything below 35% will miss. And that's why the Blazing Sword has the best battle system in this series. It's balanced, it gets more challenging but fair the more you advance, its RNG doesn't screw you around that often, and its map design is just superb. Now, Shin Megami Tensei. This saga is known for its press-turn battle system, initially appearing on Shin Megami Tensei 3, also known as Nocturne or Lucifer's Call. In a nutshell, there's a turn icon per action, and once they're all used or abused, the face switches to the enemy side. I could go on to praise this cool battle system, but I won't, since it's not the one I chose for this video. The best battle system of the entire series, in my opinion of course, has gotta be the one in Devil Survivor 1 and 2. Once again, they share almost the exact same interface and design, so I guess I'll go with the first game. We're talking about a hybrid here that combines a grid-based tactical map with a turn-based system once your characters make contact with the enemy. Like every Shin Megami Tensei game, Devil Survivor's combat core is based on the demon's skills. Your characters can also learn them by defeating the enemy with the skill you chose at the beginning of the battle. This makes the battle system so much more fun, precisely because you can break it depending on how well you use the skill crack feature. And of course, if we include the classic demon fusion, getting better demons to fight by your character's side makes it even greater. I'm not saying you can't do things like this in other titles of the franchise, I'm just pointing out the fact that I feel this system mixed so well with the regular tactical grid-based maps, which aren't exactly regular now that I think about it, since you can also use the terrain to your advantage. And boy, just like with Fire Emblem, it's all about the map design. Each mission feels carefully crafted by Careersoft, original developers of Growlancer. Most of them have different objectives, which nullifies the classic kill all enemies objective of these types of games. This is exactly why Devil Survivor's battle system is the absolute best in the series, because it did everything its predecessors did right and fused it marvelously with a strategy RPG. Now the Ys series, it won't be easy to explain contrary to what most people will believe. They're all fast-paced action games, hack and slash, so how can one drastically compare to the other? Well, let me try. For once, the first two games aren't hack and slash. Remember how you bump against your enemies in a strategic way to kill them? They certainly are unique and fun, but they don't have the best battle system. The games that followed were slash fest but brutally hard, wacky, unbalanced, and kinda clunky sometimes. Then came the remakes on the PSP and everything changed for the good. Controls were awesome, action was methodical but quick, not just a mindless massacre. And then we got the party members games where you fight with allies, still fast-paced but resembling more any other regular hack and slash. What's fun in them is the fact that you can switch characters at any given time, and each fights differently of course. So I'll start by admitting that Ys Origin has my favorite battle system, since the faster the better for me. But being able to change characters mid-battle, I don't think Origin and the others can top that. And you'd think Ys 8 will be my pick, as it is my favorite. But while I do believe it has amazing battle controls, I think I'll choose Memories of Celceta for this video. To me, it has the epitome of Ys combat. I felt as if I was playing Ys Origin, but with party members. It's definitely quicker and swifter than Ys 7 and 8, but obviously more chaotic. I like how you can just abuse the skills over and over, until you run out of points. Just keep fighting and the bar will refill naturally. There's also passive skills you can equip with the accessories, and these influence the battle. I can't forget to mention the flash guard feature. Evading at just the right time can give you the bonus of nullifying damage and turn all your counter attacks into critical hits. I also like the attack triangle carried over from E7, how you need to switch characters because their attacks are stronger or weaker to certain enemies. Honestly, it's a very addictive system. Anyhow, it's hard to choose between this system and the one in Ys 8. They're both almost identical, except 8 is slightly slower and more methodical, so I'm choosing Celceta just because I like chaos in my action RPGs. Valkyrie Profile. This might be a tough nut to crack. There's 3 games and 1 mobile garbage I don't even care about. But the other 3 have completely different battle systems. One is a side-by-side turn-based RPG, the other is a weird-ass hybrid that I love for some reason, and the third one is a grid-based tactical RPG. Yeah, you know Triae is always trying something different with each entry. Now, Silmeria is my favorite PS2 RPG, and its combat is convoluted, crazy, and hard to get into. Upon understanding it though, it becomes a hardcore addiction. I probably shouldn't pick it for this video because of its complexity, but it's just something you break, abuse, and enjoy like hell if you bear with it. So yeah, weird choice, but I gotta pick it. Upon making contact with an enemy, you're brought into these battlefields. Depending on the dungeon or the area you're traversing, the setting will be different. Terrain will affect everything sometimes, but it doesn't really play a major role. Now everything is governed by an action points bar. Moving, dashing, and attacking consume it. There's 1 turn for your party and 1 for the enemy, but only if you run out of action points or if you enter their attack range. Otherwise, the enemy will never move. The key to properly enjoying this system is to locate the leader and carefully dash towards it, but without entering its attack range. Then you can start beating the crap out of it, and once it's dead, the battle will be over. You can perform the same procedure with every single enemy if you want to get more items, skill points, and materials, but I usually go for the leader right away if I can. You're probably wondering how to attack. Well, each character is assigned to the 4 buttons of your controller, and you can just button mash it because every character can have up to 3 attacks in a row depending on the weapon they've equipped. Some of them will actually let you do a special attack that can contribute into breaking the enemy parts for more points. This break system is so satisfying. Once you start cracking up your foes, it'll be a total blast. Sometimes you'll need to move around or to charge the attack bar with 1 button to fill it up. If you do that, the enemy will move around towards you. So it's an advantage, but also a liability at the same time. Knowing when to do that or how to do that is very important, especially with the bosses. Me, I always try to stay away from their attack range as I position my party behind them. Once the bar fills up enough, I start attacking again. And by the way, bringing up the menu to use magic or items also consumes the attack bar. I love this battle system. I hated it at first, but once I put my mind into learning its mechanics, I ended up addicted to it. Which is why I think it's the best battle system in the series. Although most people will go for the first one since it's less convoluted and far easier to understand. I want to get the Xeno series out of the way first because it was just so damn hard to choose. Every saga has its own unique system, so comparing them feels interesting and out of place at the same time. I'll start by discarding the Xenoblade battle systems for a short number of reasons. They're great and enticing, especially the one in the first game, but as a player, half of the time you're barely doing anything. All you gotta do is make a choice every now and then and that's it. Not the case with the bosses though, but the random battles feel like filler most of the time. I think these battle mechanics are still awesome, but they can be somewhat hollow in my opinion. My main problem is deciding between Xenosaga and Xenogears, specifically Xenosaga 3, as I believe it took everything from its predecessors, perfecting the right and destroying the wrong. But these games, they have 2 types of combat modes, the fights with the human characters and the ones with the mechs. That's where my indecision comes in. You see, for the human battles I chose the battle system in Xenogears. Each character has several combos as their regular attacks, so it's amazing to see how your normal attacks can be often replaced by these special skills called death blows. I also think the penalties surrounding them are fair enough. Each type of attack costs action points, so pursuing or changing the combinations is a lot of fun. Also, characters have ether and different magic styles, but nothing that really stands out of the regular JRPG systems. Death blows and, later in the game, elemental death blows are where the real fun is. However, the gear battles aren't as fun as the human ones here. Battles are also played in turns, but death blows are restricted. You gotta first build the attack level to execute them. Also, instead of action points, gears use gas, and if it runs out, you need to charge. It's still a good system, don't take me wrong, but somehow I always felt it was a bit of a chore. Similar restrictions are there in the mech battles during Xenosaga 3, alright. However, the interface is much faster and better. Penalties aren't that annoying since they do not occur as often. Depending on the weapon equipped, the types of attack will be different. There's an energy level, similar to the fuel or gas thing in Xenogears, but more resilient. Plus, there's the anima mode. The more you attack, the more its bar fills up. When you reach it, attack power increases and energy costs for actions are lowered. So you see, the gear battles in both games aren't all that different, but I felt it was smoother, friendlier, and simply more engaging in Xenosaga 3. Human battles in that game also have an amazing interface, and the boost feature that you can use to act twice in a row, nowhere near as convoluted as the one in Xenosaga 2. It's a great system, and honestly I loved it as well, but it doesn't stand out that much compared to the death blow combos in Xenogears. So in conclusion, Xenogears has the best human battles, but Xenosaga 3 has the best gear battles. Most of the Legend of Heroes games are turn-based RPGs, and each arc has a different variation of the system. It's an evolution that started back at the early 90s with Dragon's Lair and still goes on today with Hajimari no Kiseki. From regular first-person turn-based to top-down view influenced by positions, fleshed out with some small grid-based elements, to continue with Trails of Cold Steel, now more based on area of effect actions and limited ranges. So which arc has the best battle mechanics of them all? I'd say the system in Cold Steel is the best. There's 4 games and each one got better over time, so it's safe to assume Steel 4 has the best of them all. A big extra that influences my decision is the fact that you can play with several different characters from previous Trails games, but that's just me being a fanboy. The battle system in this game revolves around 4 characters that you can switch for others at any given time if they're in your reserve party, of course. You can make the formations in the menu to position your characters where you think it's best for the start of each battle. Once it starts, you will only be able to move them during their turn. This plays a key role in this combat as some enemies can have a nasty area of effect attack. But so can you, which means the more enemies in your attack range, the better. There's all sorts of elemental magics involved, buffs and debuffs that also help break the battle system, and regular skills based on CP. These are points that fill up the more you attack or receive damage, but you have to consider they are also used for the special crafts. Those are usually big area of effect attacks that do massive damage to your enemies. If you have more than 100 points, you can use one at any given time, even interrupting the flow of battle. Trails of Cold Steel 4 also has an orders feature. Every single character can use one even if they are not in your active party, but as long as they are in the reserve party, you can use them as well. They're mostly buffs or debuffs that can heavily influence the battle flow in your favor. Last but not least, the chain attacks. 2 characters can be linked together and perform a combo with these, as long as they can break the enemy first, or do a critical attack, or exploit the enemy's weaknesses. They can also help each other out when in trouble. The more you use these chain attacks, the more the BP bar fills up, until it's enough to do an all-out attack, like in the Persona series. Now, just like the first Xeno games, this quadrilogy also has mech battles. The same system carries over during them, which are slightly different, but overall they play out by the same rules and advantages, although the chain attacks are mostly individual instead of linked, and each mech can have support by a human character acting separately with their own turn. See how awesome this system is? It's a fantastic evolution from all the good elements in the previous games. which is the reason why I personally think it's the best combat system in the entire franchise. Star Ocean is a small series that's only spawned 5 main games so far. So what is the best battle system out of these 5 releases? Let's compare first. Star Ocean 1 and 2 had a battle system in 2D, generally with the characters starting at the right side of the screen. These were 2D sprites in 3D environments, and I admit these systems, especially the second one, were pretty much awesome. Along came the third game, now in full 3D, but with wacky controls and strange combos. I got used to it after a while and ended up loving it, by the way. But take most of the things that were wrong with it and fix them. The result is Star Ocean: The Last Hope. I think that one has the best battle system of the series, regardless of what you think of the story. Say what you want about the plot and the characters, this video is about battle mechanics. For starters, it isn't convoluted and clunky as its predecessor. As much as I enjoyed it, I have to admit it's quite unbalanced. In The Last Hope, balance came back and difficulty progression was there. A couple of ways to enjoy this system even more were the rush gauge and the blind sides. The former were individual attacks to surprise the enemy, also used to perform a special ability. This makes battles more engaging simply because you can strategize your attacks carefully to do more damage. The blind sides were kinda tricky but very useful, especially in some boss battles. Let them target you, have them miss by quickly moving around them, or position yourself out of their line of sight. If successfully achieved, you counter and launch an attack with massive damage. Last but not least, it's worth mentioning you can choose how your characters will act in battle through a variety of fighting styles. It's called BEAT, Battle Enhancement Attribute Type. It's like an evolution from the previous Star Ocean games done right. It works just fine actually, which means your ally AI in this game is quite helpful and responsive. Only gripe I have is the camera. It can move in and out in quite the obnoxious way sometimes. Now, Star Ocean till the end of time only had 3 playable characters during battle. Thank goodness The Last Hope returned to 4. And you know what? I at least didn't have any trouble whatsoever getting used to most of them. Each felt totally different yet pleasant to control. I got my way around the game with characters like Edge, Raimi, Sarah, and even freaking Limmel! When you have a battle system like this, where almost everything works fine, you really start enjoying it to its fullest. It may not be perfect, but it's definitely the best out of them all. Wild Arms is a series that started off with regular turn-based battle systems. They were decent, playable and enjoyable with a good interface. Back then the first game stood out for the use of arms, the guns your character uses to attack. Once they run out of ammo, you need to spend 1 turn to recharge. There was also the use of magic and skills, bound by a bar that you needed to fill up. My point is, these 3 games had a neat battle system, but today, it just doesn't stand out that much. Wild Arms 4 was totally different and it introduced a clunky or rather a beta version of this hex system. Your characters could move around hexes, 1 per turn, to influence the elemental terrain in battle. It was original and innovative, but it didn't reach its epitome until Wild Arms 5, my pick for this video. Now, the idea of adding a little spice of strategy to the games was mind-blowing for me. It tore down a lot of fans, I know, but it had the opposite effect on me. Perhaps because this was the very first Wild Arms I ever played. So I was introduced to the hex system. Some hexes have no element, which means everything is possible. You can also stand in them without taking advantage of the effects. But moving on the elemental hexes is where the real strategy of the game counts. Characters and foes alike can often stand on them, and if they attack each other with the element stronger against the one they're standing on, they do more damage. Normal attacks, however, are the same no matter where you are, but using them stacks up the force meter. This one will help you into creating awesome combos between your characters, or even special attacks, some including the summoning of guardian beasts. And let's not forget that certain accessories let your party members perform chain attacks or even consecutive attacks. This battle system is simply superb, and it also carries over elements from the first Wild Arms, like the need to use a turn to recharge your weapon if it runs out of ammo. Plus, Wild Arms 5 feels more Western-like than its predecessor, especially considering its gun shenanigans performed by several party members. Overall, it's the best one in the series in my opinion, and the last one of its kind. Let's talk now about one of the most underrated series of all time, Growlancer. Just like with Wild Arms, in this case I do have to go with my favorite in the series, but of course I'll share my reasons why. There are 6 games in this franchise, but we only got 4 of them, so it's not gonna be that hard to compare them. Growlancer, Heritage of War, also known as Growlancer 5, has the best combat of them all. Now every single title in the series has a real-time strategy system. Characters have attack and move waiting bars just like the enemies, but it all happens with no turns whatsoever, which means battles flow in real time as the title implies. As the player, you need to strategize on these battlefields to select where your characters will move, considering the terrain, the enemy number, the enemy type, and your different playable allies. You also need to select their actions to whatever might be more convenient for that particular small amount of time. Just 1 second can completely change things upside down for either you or your enemies. However, in these older games, you were stuck waiting for every action to be carried out, while constantly pausing the game to redirect your characters or to select a different command. Well, guess what Growlancer 5 does with this system? It lets the player freely control their characters. No more forcefully setting the destination, you can just move your character on your own to get it closer to the enemy. Action is fast-paced here and not clunky and primitive like the other older games, because as much as I love them with all my heart, I gotta admit they play like PlayStation 1 games. Growlancer 5 totally feels like a PlayStation 2 RPG with better controls, faster interface, and full-screen menus to carefully select your actions. The map and mission design give this game a huge extra point, how most of them have different objectives with very intelligent design in the setting and layout of every single battlefield. So it's the epitome of the Growlancer battle system. Like most JRPGs, characters have a skill tree, and the more they fight, the more points they'll get to unlock new abilities. Which ones to use or abuse plays a major role here, because magic and skills can turn the tide of battle in your favor. In a nutshell, Growlancer 5 is a hybrid that mixes real-time strategy with action. I guess similar in a way to Final Fantasy XII? Anyway, masterpiece of a game, and its amazing battle mechanics are a big reason why I picked it over the others.